You're listening to the Multifamily Innovation Show with Patrick Antrim, your source for innovative strategies for multifamily professionals, CEOs, executive leaders, and aspiring leaders that want to drive high-performance results for their property or portfolio.
All right, today we will explore a whole new set of questions on how we maximize leasing operations. Our guest today is Larry Gorman. He's a senior technology executive. He has over 25 years experience in the multifamily industry and currently serves as the president for LeaseHawk. He builds and leads teams to drive business value through the innovative use of technology. Prior to LeaseHawk, Larry served as an executive vice president and chief technology officer for Invitation Homes, largest owner and operator of single-family homes for lease in the United States. Larry led multiple technology initiatives as part of a $20 billion merger for Starwood Waypoint Homes, delivering a unified platform for managing business and critical operations of an 80,000 property portfolio across 17 markets in the United States. Now, as a chief technology officer of Starwood Waypoint Homes, Larry led the technology team that pioneered the use of smart home technology in the single-family residential space. Prior to this role at Starwood Waypoint Homes, Larry served in multiple technology leadership roles as Choice Hotels International. That's Choice Hotels International, one of the largest lodging franchises in the world. He led efforts to create hospitality's industry's first large-scale cloud-based property management system used by thousands of hotels in North America, Europe, and Australia. And he was instrumental in bringing this platform to the broader hospitality market as a co-founding leader of SkyTouch Technology. Larry, it's great to have you back with us in the studio.
Glad to be here, Patrick. Appreciate that nice, warm welcome.
Yeah, and quite the journey. What gets you excited, I guess, about really moving innovative products, not only into industries, but other companies that you serve?
Well, sure. What I've really found exciting about my career is how we can leverage technology to come up with creative solutions for really pervasive problems that folks are struggling with dealing with. And in hospitality and single family and multifamily, those three industries are very similar to each other. And the problems that we thought we'd solved years ago are now starting to creep up again. And now we need to come up with even newer and more innovative solutions. And it's just so much fun to be part of the creative process, the trial and error, the experimentation. And when you find something that actually works, then it's just no other feeling like it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and those industries similar to ours, probably out of necessity had to move earlier in the trend. I mean, I know COVID forced our hand, as you said earlier, around what we're doing today. But does it give you confidence knowing that you can see sort of the path or the roadmap of the future, knowing that you've already solved these critical components in very complex businesses across the world in these technologies?
Well, I do see some parallels certainly between hospitality and the journey that we're on now with multifamily. My parents, when they were booking travel years ago, they always went through a travel agent, and they leveraged those human-focused services on helping them book their airfare, their hotel, and any activities that they may want to do in their destination. And today, my kid, who's in his 20s, doesn't even know what a travel agent is. He does everything self-service, 100%. He does all of his research online. He doesn't use a human at all. He buys his own tickets to the airline, to his activities, his airfare, his hotel, all without the use of anybody else. And he does it whenever he feels like it. He can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning, or he can do it during business hours. And when you compare what the leasing process is like now with multifamily, we're much better now than we were even a year ago, and COVID forced our hand there, but we're still early on that journey that we need to make with that digital transformation to allow multifamily customers to be able to lease homes the same way that they buy other products and engage in the market with other services in different industries.
Yeah, and I'd love to explore sort of the challenges and problems that we have right now in leasing. I was reading a report around business communication recently. That report showed that 90% of the consumers wanted to engage with a business. This is small business. This is your bakery shop, local businesses outside of multifamily, and the data supported the customer expected this certain way of interacting, yet when you looked at the businesses, they had a completely different view of what the priority was and what the customer even expected. And so there's a big disconnect there. And so there's obviously opportunities for those businesses to meet customer expectations. But what do you see today as a problem that we have in leasing, or any challenges in our current state?
Well, let's talk about expectations a little bit, because in today's world, we are a mobile-first, self-service society on pretty much everything that we do when we conduct our lives. I can do all my banking online. I can buy my Christmas presents online. I can plan on my vacation online, all from my mobile phone on my terms. And I can engage with employees or whatever businesses I'm working with if I feel like it, but I don't necessarily have to. And today, the leasing process in multifamily still requires a certain level of human interaction that it probably shouldn't be necessary. It should be available and optional if you want it, but it shouldn't be necessary. As an example, if I want to learn about touring an apartment unit, I shouldn't have to worry about what time of day it is. Is it the middle of the night and I'm looking for my next place to live? If I pick up that phone and call and the office is closed, I'm not going to get the answers to the questions that I had. We shouldn't have these artificial constraints that we put in place during the leasing journey due to the need to interact with staff, whether it's business hours or whether it's I don't have enough leasing agents to actually accompany you on your tour, or I'm trying to email you and you're not responding to me in a timely manner. Those kinds of things are artificial constraints, forcing the consumer to do business on the community's terms rather than the other way around. And the standard has been set by Amazon, by Airbnb, other companies like that. And we need to be meeting those expectations much better than we currently are as an industry.
Yeah, and when you were working with those other brands and even single family and hospitality, I imagine at some point they were at that point where they had to sort of take the leap into this new way, even though that way was expected by the customer. Are you seeing any? What are the lessons learned for those aspects? I mean, what can we?
Yeah,
it's not as hard as it appears sometimes. Are there fears involved?
Well, yes, it's there's going to be things that are harder than what you thought. There's going to be things that are easier than you thought, but you're going to learn a lot along the journey. So just like with any innovative effort, you want to do things incrementally, learn from it, and make adjustments and move forward. And so in the multifamily space, our hand was forced with COVID, and we were forced to do more in the first 2 months of the pandemic than what we thought was possible to do in 2 years. And so I think we all surprised ourselves in a very pleasant way that, hey, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Having a 100% remote staff, for example, we can actually make that work. Or having my leasing office closed and trying to figure out a way to conduct virtual tours, hey, we can actually make this work. This is possible. And now that we have a lot more experience, we've learned about things that have generated results and we've learned about things that haven't. And virtual tours is a great example that if you didn't have a virtual tour program when COVID hit, what did you do? So people scrambled to get iPhone videos going or FaceTime going. And those are all really nice ways to react to a crisis. But now we've got great online virtual tours through Matterport or LCP 360. We've got great self-guided tours that you can do to where you can actually schedule a tour online and go enter the community on your terms and tour the apartment unit yourself without actually having to be accompanied by a leasing agent. Those things are all learnings that we've gained through the course of this pandemic that are now becoming part of the permanent fabric of how we lease homes.
Yeah, and innovation is about getting better. Nowhere does it say go back to how it was, right?
Well, there are people saying that, aren't they? It's like we are a human business.
We're comfortable with that.
Yeah, we're a human business, and that was a temporary thing. We got to go back to the way it was. But man, just look at the results. Yeah, you can do more with fewer people, or the people that you have on staff can actually scale as companies grow to take on more of the leasing processes without having to hire a bunch of people.
Right. And what's fascinating to me is because I was talking with your client success team earlier in other conversations, and the leasing agents are the ones that are really like embracing this right now, which is awesome because that role is evolving and those people that get out in front of that stuff. Talk to me a little bit about how you see that role shaping and leveraging like this technology.
Well, sure. Well, let's talk about a problem that we're facing now with leasing, and that is employee labor shortages.
Right.
So business is really doing well, and people are growing. Occupancies numbers are looking better, and we need to have staff to support all of that activity. And leasing offices are struggling to hire, just like every industry seems to be right now.
And they promote them fast.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
even though you have the leasing agent role filled, you're moving them up into, which is a great thing, but it also creates a problem there.
Creates a problem there. And we know turnover historically is really high in that profession as well. And so you're constantly trying to backfill for people that have left for whatever reason. So the end result of that problem is when you've invested all these marketing dollars to market your community and all it has to offer, the call to action that you are giving the consumers is pick up the phone and call, or send me a text, or send me an email. And that call to action only has value if there's somebody in the leasing office who can engage with the consumer. So you've won if you've gotten someone motivated enough to actually call you, but that is a lost opportunity if the phone rings and nobody picks up. LeaseHawk, we track millions of phone calls a month with LeaseHawk clients to help them measure the effectiveness of their phone-based ad sources. And we see missed calls being a bigger problem now than it's ever been. This has been a pervasive problem in the industry for years. And historically, according to LeaseHawk data, leasing offices miss about 44% of their inbound phone calls. In the last 6 months, that number has increased overall to 50% of all of your inbound phone calls are not being answered. And even worse, that trend is getting higher. In the last rolling average for 60-day rolling average, we're now at 54% of inbound phone calls are not being picked up. So in the course of 6 months, we've gone from 44% to 54%. That's a 10 percentage point swing. 10% is a huge number.
Right.
And those are all missed opportunities that could turn someone potentially interested into an actual resident. And you're paying for those leads,
Right.
whether you actually connect with them or not. So that's wasted marketing dollars, it's missed opportunity. And one way of dealing with that crisis is to partner with a call center, and that can really help, because if you don't pick up the phone, then the call gets routed to a call center. But we are talking to call center companies, and they're struggling with the same problems that leasing offices are, that they have a hard time reacting to the significant increase in call volume that they're seeing. And so the result there is their cost of delivering the service increases. The customer experience with the caller is hurt by this because they're spending more time waiting in queue for a leasing agent or a call center agent to answer. And if that is 5-10 minutes, you're going to have people hang up.
Yeah.
And they're not going to call back. LeaseHawk stats also show that 56% of the people won't call back.
Right.
That's full stop. You got one call, and if you don't connect, they moved on to another community. So that is a pervasive problem. It's a waste of marketing dollars. It's missed opportunities, and the end result is it's going to take you longer to lease your available homes.
So where do you guys fit into that stack? Of you've got the call center you mentioned, you have the leasing agent doing more with less time, all of those things. Plus the call centers are surging on their activity. Where do you guys? How does it all work together?
Yeah, so I'll talk to you about a really cool product that LeaseHawk came out with about 1.5 years ago, just when I joined LeaseHawk. It was great timing on my part. We call this product ACE. It's a conversational virtual leasing assistant. Think of it as something like Alexa for leasing. That if people are comfortable with their Alexa Echo devices at home, they can talk to their device.
So you're leveraging what Google, Siri, and Alexa's doing to train the customer's expectations.
Well, right. So now when exactly. So when a consumer calls a leasing office looking for a place to live, if the leasing agent doesn't answer the phone, then ACE will answer the phone, introduce herself, and ask how she can help. And then the caller will just say why they're calling. And then Alexa for leasing, or ACE, as we call her, will have a conversation with the caller to answer their basic leasing questions, collect contact information for follow-up, schedule a tour if she can. And all of that information gets collected, the conversation gets recorded, the conversation gets transcribed, and it all gets stored in the CRM. So leasing agents don't really even have to care about the fact that ACE is answering their leasing calls for them. They just work their leads that show up in their CRM like they do for any other lead, which is a wonderful thing because they're not having to deal with a lot of retraining as a result of
Current process.
yeah. Well, yeah, like because a lot of people get afraid if, oh my gosh, we're gonna buy this really cool product.
Right.
My boss is making me install it. The installation's going to be difficult. I'm gonna have to train my people to do all these new things. I've already got problems with staffing. I'm overworked. I'm overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? You're making my life worse. And the reality is that's a fair concern to have, but it's an unfounded concern. The reality is that technology like ACE is going to make their life easier. It's not a difficult technical lift to get ACE up and running. Typically, we can get a property up and running in about an hour. And that time is spent
1 hour. Really?
1 hour. That time is spent configuring ACE to make sure that the brand and personality that you want to infuse your artificial intelligence virtual assistant with is consistent with your brand standards, and that that ACE is armed with the information that she needs to properly answer questions. It takes us typically about an hour to set that up. And that gets you about 80% of the way there. And then we can have some fun with it if you want to turn some of ACE's responses into more marketing-oriented responses, because ACE is also a salesperson just like your staff. And so something like if someone asks if you have a pool, a basic answer might be, yes, we have a pool. But that's not how you would train your leasing staff to answer that. You want to sell it. You want to sell that pool.
Right.
Oh, we have a beautiful resort-style pool where it's just going to be so relaxing to come home at the end of the day and have a nice swim. Whatever you want to say, that's the kind of message that you can configure ACE to provide. And that can be whether someone is interacting with ACE on a phone call or interacting with ACE on a text-based conversation or on a property website via chat. That's the kind of configuration that we do, typically an hour. Now, if you're integrating with a CRM, which we highly recommend because it allows your leasing staff to...
And who do you integrate with? All of them?
All the major ones, yeah. Yeah. And if we don't, if we run into a client who's interested in ACE and they use a CRM that we don't integrate with, then that's a pretty easy lift on our part. And at this stage, we've been at it now for 18 months. We integrate with most of the major CRMs. We integrate most of the major property management systems, and we get pricing and availability information from the property management system. So ACE is going to always be quoting the correct pricing and availability information that people ask about.
So the obvious problem is we can't find staff. This is a great solution. Are there any other problems that you end up solving that you didn't expect to solve? Like you just mentioned how, you're explaining the pool in sort of marketing terms in a very digital way. It makes me think about scenarios of, you're running a large portfolio across multiple locations, or it's a lease up. And, when you build and design an apartment community, it's dirt, and you kind of look forward about where that property sits in the community, what it represents to the fabric of the community, how you want the brand positioned and articulated. And as you hire and if the turnover's there, it starts to drift away from the, what it all means. The brand, do you have more control over the brand statements and stuff by being able to sort of essentially script these things?
Well, absolutely. You've asked a couple questions there. So the last question you asked is very interesting in that you can customize ACE to match whatever brand standards that you may have in place. So from the chatbot, making sure that the styling is consistent with your property website or with any of the other marketing channels that are online, from how ACE sounds, whether you want a male or a female voice, or if you want a British accent or an American accent, or there's just so many different ways that you can tune that voice. And then just how ACE greets herself, what you name ACE. We call ACE as a product, but we don't expect anyone to actually call her ACE as she's a person. Most of our clients actually give it a name that's consistent with whatever their brand is. So so people get pretty clever with it, but it's very common for them to give ACE an actual name, and then that's how they refer to their virtual leasing agent. So there's many ways that you can customize that experience to match the brand standards of your organization. And you'd also asked about anything we've been surprised by, and we're always getting surprised. When we initially deployed ACE, our value proposition, the problem that we thought we were going to be solving, was the missed phone calls that people are getting at odd hours of the day. Because the leasing office is open, we know that you're going to be missing phone calls, but we also know a lot of people are going to be calling at night. But what we found is ACE answers most of her calls during business hours. 98% of her phone calls that she picks up happen during business hours. We weren't expecting that. We were expecting to be a stronger mix to off hours because the leasing agents would be picking it up during business hours. But one of the reasons that turned out to be that way is leasing agents are busy and they've got a lot on their plate. And if they know that phone call is going to be answered by their leasing assistant, then they can focus their energies on other things. Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly what we have found to be the case. So that was an interesting learning. And it makes sense now in hindsight that that's what would have happened, but we were anticipating to get a higher call.
I think every leasing agent would want an assistant.
Yeah.
They're all asking for either more leasing agents.
She doesn't take a coffee break, doesn't take a lunch break. It's 24/7. So I think that's wonderful. Another interesting thing that we didn't anticipate was with the ACE chatbot. We saw that as something as an extension to voice. If I'm online and I have questions I want answered, I can get immediate responses to those questions, which is a huge improvement over submitting a contact form. But we have found that people are using it almost like a Google search bar. And it makes sense as well because marketing websites that we spend a lot of money in creating, there's beautiful content, but not always easy to access, especially if I'm on a mobile phone, which in some cases 60% or more of the activity we see on our websites are mobile. Well, if that information is not easy to surface, then that information might as well not be on the website because people can't find it. So what we've been seeing is consumers are going to a website, they see ACE inviting them to chat, they click on ACE and they just ask a question and ACE will service the answer. She'll bring up the links that point to the property website so she can always direct you to all the information that you've invested in creating. But it's such a much easier way to find it.
Property Google right in the...
Property Google. And that's not at all, we didn't build it that way.
You look at Google search, I mean, on your phone, it's even the SEO, search engine optimization teams are writing blogs in the tone of voice because, they're searching with voice in some cases, right? Like, maybe they're driving, it's safer to do that.
That's right.
But so in this web interface, what is it?
The chatbot interface,
okay.
Right.
So that's interesting. So they're coming there almost as it's a search experience,
and that's how they're doing it. And we just look at the nature of the interactions that we have on chat. That some of them just seem like they're treating it like a Google search bar,
right? And
then ACE can using our artificial intelligence understands what they're asking and can either provide a nice marketing-oriented response, or can direct them to more information by giving them a URL. They can click on that link and then learn more. So that's just a great way to help people get through the discovery process of wondering, is this a good community for me to live in? Is my dog accepted at this location? What are the rental requirements? What are the application fees? All these kinds of very nuts and bolts type of questions can all get answered through an interactive conversation in real time. And we do get feedback that how helpful this is compared to the alternative, which is if I'm at 2:00 in the morning and I'm searching online for my next place, I'm not going to call because I assume the leasing office is closed. And what I do have is a contact form where if I provide you my information, my name, my phone number, email, and why am I looking, then somebody from the office will reach back to me, and it might take a day or two, but it'll come back to me. Well, a couple things there is you've already put up a bit of a wall there because me as a consumer, I've got to give you some personal information before you're willing to talk to me. And that's not cool. Some people are happy to do it, but not everybody's going to want to do it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, how long is it going to take to get that email response? And you may have lost interest and moved on by that time. So by having that chatbot experience, you just start typing your questions, and ACE is not going to ask for your contact information until there's a reason to ask for your contact information. And so if we can...
That improves conversions too, right? I mean, people are more invested, I think, at that point.
Well, right, because you're giving me some value, and so I'm willing to give you something in exchange. So I'm not going to offer you something before I even know anything about you. So I'm not going to give you my name and my phone number. If you force me to, I might just make up something just to get past that gate. Right. So why put that artificial friction into the process? What you want to do at the early stages is just answer their questions, help them figure out if this community is something that they're interested in learning more in. And so it's a higher quality lead. So when they finally do provide you your contact information, the lead's already gone through that first step of self-qualifying that I know enough now to where it's worth giving you my name and my email address so you can contact me, as opposed to everybody doing that as their first step. You end up with a lot of low quality leads that you have to sift through.
Sure.
And so with ACE and with the chat experience, same thing on the phone, is that by the time a guest card is created in the CRM for follow-up, you've already had a nice interaction. You've already answered 3 or 4 or 5 questions. They've already said, I want to tour. And so that's just a much higher quality lead, so that the time that your leasing staff is investing in the follow-up is going to pay a lot better dividends, because these folks that they're talking to have already self-qualified themselves much further along through the pipeline.
And for those listeners that are trying to evaluate, what their next move is to interact with their customers this way, maybe they already have taken their step already. How do you're familiar with what's out there, what's available, and the different focuses of each brand. How would you separate LeaseHawk and ACE from sort of all the rest? Is there a differentiator, or are you, for example, like there's Android and Apple users, T-Mobile, AT&T, all different brands, and people get into purchasing off features, cost, motivated by different things, bundling of things, brands, support brands. And so how do you guys differentiate into the marketplace, I think, with other things that are out there?
Yeah, so there's a couple areas there. Certainly, there are other options out there for chatbots, let's say. Not all chatbots are created equal. Not all chatbots are trying to solve the same problems. So we see 2 general styles of chatbots out there. One, which is what LeaseHawk is a conversational chatbot that's built on artificial intelligence that can allow you to have natural conversations. You can say whatever you want, and ACE will understand what you're saying. The other option is what we'd call a menu-driven type of an interaction, where you bring up the chatbot interface and you are selected with a menu of options, and you can click one of those options, and then a secondary menu of options will come up, and you can drill into the different options that become available to find the answers to the questions that you're looking for. And so both have their benefits. And what I like about ACE's solution is that it has conversations with people the way they talk, because you're not being constrained by whatever menu items that are listed. If I have a question about if you'll take my my Rottweiler, and the only options I have are rental requirements and fees and deposits, well, which one do I check first to find out if I then have an option to look at my pet policy or something? You might have to go 2 or 3 levels deep into that tree to find pet policy. Whereas with ACE, you just say, will you accept my Rottweiler? And then ACE will give you the answer, and then also give you a link to find out more information if you wanted to get into details. So it's just a much easier way of getting right to the point. I don't have to drill down into it. And I like the fact that it speaks like a human, that even interacting on chat, that it's a very much more natural way to converse. That said, ACE also offers the very helpful guided conversation bubbles that go along with it. So if you ask a question about deposits and fees, ACE will answer that, but will also offer suggestions as well. Would you like to learn more about these things? And then it'll provide options. And if you're interested, you can click into that, and then ACE will drill down in the conversation. So I think in that case, the ACE chatbot offers the best of both worlds. If you want to speak conversationally to the chatbot, go right to the answer to that specific question, ACE will do that for you. If you're not really sure and you're just kind of hunting and pecking around, ACE has those bubbles that you can click into and just kind of do your own surfing online, so to speak.
Yeah, and this goes back into that customer expectation component of how people you going back to even the Google Home or the Siri or Alexa, this conversational approach. It's funny, I have iPhone, so I'm using Siri, and she might want to start answering, but I got it on mute right now. Yeah. But I'll say, hey Siri, and she'll say, like
that's cool. You can train.
And I didn't even know it did that.
What do you want, Patrick?
Yes.
What do you want?
But
now?
I noticed it getting a little bit more like natural, like
and ACE is very natural in that regard as well. And you can have a voice conversation with ACE. Most chatbots are chat only, so you have to deploy it on a property website. With ACE, we are an omni-channel solution. So if you are on the phone and you want to talk to somebody, ACE is there to answer the phone. As we are the only virtual leasing agent in the industry that offers a complete, uncompromising solution on the voice channel. Well, Ace will have a very good conversation with you.
How do you get there from the journey? I mean, people start on maybe search, they end up maybe even an ILS.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get to, where does ACE interact?
Yeah, ACE is there at every step of the way. So we can publish ACE on any online source that supports a click. So if I want to go to Google My Business or to Yelp or to Facebook, you can include a call to action on any of those locations to say, hey, if you want answers to any of your questions 24/7, click here. And you click there, and then you're engaging the ACE chatbot. A lot of calls to action have a prominently displayed phone number. You might start off with a Google search, and you end up on one of the ILSs. You find the property website or the listing there. What's the most prominently featured item that you see on you bring that up? I just see the property phone number, and it's just begging you to pick up the phone and call. And
well, there's a
will
reason
answer it.
why these calls are not getting answered. You mentioned the staffing shortage, but that means that people want to call.
Yeah, right. I mean, people are calling. The call to action is working, right?
Right.
You're investing in these ads. You're investing in these listings to get people to engage and execute that call to action that you're encouraging them to do, and that's working. That part's working.
Mm-hmm.
The next step, though, is to actually connect them with somebody who can take them down to the next step in the funnel, and that's the part that is so often is broken because of the inability for us to keep up with all the call volume, and that's really where ACE shines, because ACE can either be the first point of contact that ACE will always answer the phone. ACE could be configured to answer only during off hours. ACE could be configured to answer just the overflow. ACE can be configured to answer if the leasing office doesn't answer and the call center doesn't answer, then ACE could answer. All those things are certainly possible with ACE. Most of our clients, though, are finding that we would want our leasing staff to pick up the phone if they're available, but if they don't pick up after 3 rings, hand it over to ACE, and she'll take the call. She'll get the questions answered. She'll collect the contact information. She'll schedule those tours. She'll put all that information in the CRM. So the leasing staff just goes about their day, nurturing those leads, engaging with those leads through their CRM using their existing business processes. They don't have to do anything special to gain the benefit from ACE. There's no different system they need to log in. They don't need to check their email. They don't need to look at different reports. The leads just show up in their CRM. The appointments just show up in their calendar, and their activities just work like any other lead. So that's just the beauty of it. And that's really why leasing agents, once they get it on board, whatever concerns or fears they had quickly go away, because they're seeing that this is making their life easier.
Are what would that be, those concerns?
Oh, yeah.
Is
So
this going to replace us, or, I mean...
Yeah, a couple concerns. One is yet another tool I now have to learn. Do you know how many logins you've given me already, boss? You know, I've got to log into this. I got to log into that. If this happens, I got to go to this website. If that happens, I got to go to this website. You're overwhelming me with technology.
Yeah, and then I can't
And then now you're throwing in this new AI tool that's so cool and exciting and demos well, but now it's yet another system I need to learn. Please stop. That's the initial reaction we typically get. And then the second reaction is, oh my gosh, this is a virtual agent that's going to replace me. So it's either you're making my life difficult, or you're going to work me out of a job. And neither one of those things are true. So on the implementation side, as I said before, we can get ACE up and running in less than an hour. And the only caveat to that, Patrick, just in full disclosure, is if we're integrating with other systems, we need help from the client to say, how do we connect, whether user ID and password and other credentials. And so sometimes they have to look that up from their IT staff, and that might take a little bit. But just those kinds of details, sure, might take a little long just because they may not know the information. But in terms of the nuts and bolts configuration of ACE and getting her up and running, getting her on the website, it's just not an issue. And so we'd have one client that was doing a big CRM rollout, and they were really interested in configuring ACE and getting it working for them. But they said, let's do the CRM rollout first, then follow up with the ACE rollout, because we don't want to do 2 rollouts at once. And we were able to show them that, no, that ACE is not really a rollout. It's just a couple of things that you're doing, and it could be actually part of your CRM rollout. And so that's definitely a fear and a concern that makes sense on the surface, but that just isn't founded when you look at how easy ACE can be implemented at a site. The second one is about, is ACE going to replace me as a leasing agent? And that's a fear people have in general with artificial intelligence. We've all seen the movies. Skynet
Robots.
is self-aware, and it's going to destroy mankind as we know it, or robots are going to take over the world, and I don't have a job anymore. We do see in some industries the displacement for sure, but when it comes to leasing and the leveraging of virtual leasing assistants, where we are now in the technology cycle is that ACE and other leasing technologies, virtual leasing technologies, are there to supplement and enhance the leasing experience, both for the leasing agent and for the consumer. The consumer is getting a great experience because they are able to get their questions answered immediately. They're not having to take days emailing back and forth. They don't have to worry about waiting in line for someone to pick up the phone. They're getting everything that they need as quickly as we can, and then they can make their leasing decisions. So that's a much better experience to the user. To the leasing agent, a lot of those first contact interactions are going to be low value because so many people are just kicking the tires. And yet you've got to invest time to talk to them. You got to invest time to follow up with them. You've got to invest time to try and encourage them to move along. With a virtual leasing agent like ACE can do all that for you. And by the time the human gets involved, this is a high quality lead. They've already done the self-discovery, the self-qualification. They've done the discovery. They know enough now to where I want to actually come in and look at your property. So now the leasing agent's interactions are a lot higher quality. It's going to result in a much higher conversion, and they can focus their time on the things that really matter, not the stuff that you have to do just to weed people out.
Yeah, and at our innovation summit, I think I mentioned around the banking trends, and many of these banks, large banks, had enough resources to keep places, things in place, and they were talking about the evolution of the customer and the evolution of branches and what you can transfer money in apps, and you have the whole crypto, whole sort of disruption of how you move things around there. But they were talking about they're closing certain branches, but it wasn't because they wanted to save money. The customers just weren't going there. The buying experience evolved, and so you see, and I mentioned in a green room, I was talking about a recent trip. We went to Vegas, and I was able to a kiosk. You scan your ID, and it already has your reservation, and it spits out your key card, and literally it was a self-guided with a kiosk. But we brought the family there, so we were going to get connecting rooms and stuff. And obviously the technology, that's not a scenario that comes up a lot. And so, but there was somebody there to interact. There was this sort of human takeover, and it was great because that individual was able to get us what we needed without literally doing all the obvious stuff, like, let me see your ID. They already had all that there, so they could focus on just getting us the room coordinations and things like that with what they wanted. So giving back to the efficiency of the business, I know a lot of investors are looking at, how do you operate in a modern way? Right now, it's never been harder to keep cash flow going because in many, you got restrictions on even enforcing collections, and the expectations on the general economy, pushing rents that we wrote pro formas 5 years ago, and we expected certain things. So this is an important conversation, I think, for investors. And then leasing agents, I'm sure, when I was leasing apartments, that would have been awesome. Rent more apartments, more commissions, and more ways to to keep that occupancy bonuses, and all those things in place.
So what that means ultimately from an investment standpoint is the number of units that a single leasing agent can support can increase. They have that capacity available to do other things. So you could redirect that staff to focus more on resident experience to help boost up your renewal rates. A renewal rate is a much better outcome in almost every case than having someone move out and then having to replace them with a new resident. So making sure that you're delighting your residents with a great experience so that that's not a reason why they move out. And then they're more likely to accept rent increases as well, to avoid the stress of moving out, perhaps, especially if they had a great experience while they were there. So that's a way you can refocus what it means to be a leasing agent. It's not just picking up the phone and answering those first contact calls. You've automated that. You've got ACE on the job. ACE is taking care of that 24/7. It's not about scheduling tours. You've got ACE. ACE is going to do that. Getting your contact information in your CRM, making sure that your follow-up is happening, that's covered. What the leasing agent can now focus on is that last mile of the leasing process. What do I do after the tour is over, and I want to follow up and walk them through the application process, and then the leasing, and ultimately the move-in? That's where the meat of the sales process is, and that's where the leasing agent really earns their value, when they can help hold the hand of these residents as they navigate that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, just from an investment standpoint, tying them back to the bigger picture too of because you're talking about taking away the things that really humans aren't designed to do. Like, we're interrupted, shifting. There's data on how long it takes to get back on task and all those things. But more time with the customers, even if it's just waving and smiling as you're walking the property, just being more visible, impacts customer reputation. And now with reviews influencing so much of the buying experience, if your leasing agents are there doing those types of things, that role evolves into more of a retention even strategy, which ultimately impacts that bottom line, which is why we're in business, right? I mean, so it becomes less about just converting, but actually really driving the long-term customer value.
No question
giving
about it.
them that power. And I would love to see organizations and maybe we can bring people on to talk about new ways that if their roles evolving, maybe we're evolving the way that we're even incentivizing and rewarding and
I like where you're
motivating.
thinking.
Yeah.
You meant I spent 20 plus years in hospitality before moving into residential real estate, and the parallels here are very interesting. That around 9/11 and soon after that, as we were making this digital transformation on the reservation process in hospitality, moving people away from travel agents to the online travel agents to the branded booking websites, it was all focused on what we would call heads and beds. And a lot of money was invested in technology to simplify the reservations process. But what happens when the guest is on property and is staying there? They then realized, once they saw that problem, they had to really focus on guest experience. And now even more money was invested in leveraging technology to create delightful experiences for guests when they're on property. Because ultimately, it's all about experiences. The booking is just the first step in that journey. You've got to make sure that you're delivering value when they're actually enjoying what they paid for. And the parallels with multifamily are the same. That we are right now in our digital transformation, we're focusing a lot of attention on how to get that lease signed as quickly as possible, while providing a delightful experience for the consumer and doing it at at lowest cost for the operator. But what happens when they move in? That's when the real challenge begins, because now they've just bought a 12-month lease, and now you've got to make sure you're delivering the high quality, delightful experience for the next 12 months, so that when it's time to renew, it's a no-brainer for both sides. They're a great resident. They're paying their rent on time. They're not trashing the place, and the resident is enjoying themselves. They're meeting people. They're building community there, and so your renewal rates are going to really be impacted if you can start thinking about the resident experience the way we've up to now been thinking about the leasing journey as it pertains to the digital transformation.
Yeah, and I think about just the investment conversation. You're mentioning, the experience. You start to think about hotels and the single family market. They're classified in such a way where you just have, I guess hotels are more, you could have, luxury hotels and sort of limited service hotels where people are traveling and they're in town for a meeting and they're out. And then you have like people are traveling for vacations. I would see it parallel into the, different experiences for different needs. But it's very interesting because the type of, so you have in multifamily, everybody has different investment objectives, short-term, long-term holds. I'm a developer, right? Or this is a low-income, affordable housing. You have tax credit. You have different sort of structures in how these properties are assembled. But the customer is pretty much the same. In fact, even more so, with the way that they communicate, because mostly everybody has a phone today, and they're calling, they're texting, and these types of things. So, do you see any parallels to what best asset class this serves, or is it
Wow, that's
everything?
a whole conversation of itself. But as you were talking, I was thinking about how do you connect like the lodging with in a hotel experience versus lodging in just an everyday living experience, and I see three dimensions there because it's all really the same. It's you've got length of stay, how long are you going to be staying there. So in a hotel, it's usually a compressed length of stay. You got your amenities package, and the shorter the length of stay, usually the more interesting the amenity package has to be because they're looking for more experiences there. The longer the stay, like extended stay hotels or a 12-month lease, your amenity package might be more basic. And then there's your price point. Are you a luxury or are you a budget? There's somewhere in between. And on all three of those things are a continuum. And so hospitality, single family, and multifamily, these are all part of the same continuum. It's all lodging and experiences. And in a day-to-day multifamily experience, you want to be able to deliver a great experience that meets and exceeds expectations. So you want that amenity package to be right, and you want it to actually impress. You want the price point to be able to deliver the value, and the length of stay. If it's a 12-month lease, you want them to renew. So I do see a lot of similarities in that, but just how do you construct the package based on those three variables is where it gets really interesting from a consumer standpoint.
Yeah.
Technology is a lot of technology though is the same behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah, and it used to be nice to have, and now it's more like a necessity for the transaction piece. I'd love to do more work with you guys on understand, because the hospitality focus is fascinating. I know that it's probably one of the things that we don't. I mean, the reputation management and all that stuff is sort of the lagging indicator maybe to that, but and it's very tough because sometimes not everybody participates in recognizing the place that they live, because in many cases sometimes the good customers just go on with their life, and they don't do that. But if you have more engaged experiences in place, maybe you could awaken some of those people that really love and enjoy that leasing experience, and you shift the transactional and sort of the conversion stuff into this type of technology.
I think people who can solve that are gonna start changing the way we think about this. Because the initial feedback I hear from people when I talk about this is, well, that's great on the service, but nobody's going to want to pay for it. Like they want a Ritz-Carlton service at Motel 6 prices, and that's where the disconnect is. And you just got to, that's just where you got to figure it out. That what is an amenity package that makes sense for the price point that you're offering your product at. But at the end of the day, a lot of it might just be culture. What is the culture of your team on site? And are they treating this like a hospitality type experience? When I stayed in a nice hotel, clearly they're trained on what guest service means. If you stay at a nice apartment community, are they trained in guest service the same way that hotel staff might be, to make sure that every interaction, every touch point that staff has with a resident is the best interaction that you could possibly have? Yeah. And it's a question, and I don't know if everyone is thinking about it in those terms, but maybe because I grew up in hospitality, that's how I naturally am wired to think about it. But it just seems natural to me that if you delight your residents, give them a great experience, you're going to drive renewals. You're going to drive an acceptance of the higher rates at renewal time. Everybody wins.
Yeah, and what is it? The Disney starts with clean bathrooms.
No, yeah.
There's a lot we can do with what we have, and I think
ACE does not clean bathrooms just yet, but that's something we should work on. I'll take that down as a note.
What does ACE stand for? Is that
well, ACE was an acronym when the product first came out. It was originally focused on the pervasive problem of answering the missed calls. Gotcha. So ACE was an acronym for answers calls every time. And that was the reminder. ACE will answer your call every time.
So with that, I mean, if people are missing, like just that alone. Forget like all the other really. You mentioned the search within the chat and the way that it sort of goes along with all the click from different places. I mean, if it just answers calls, if it only did that,
that's a win. If that's all it did,
rent a week type thing.
Yeah, if all ACE did was answer calls, that's tremendous value. But ACE does so much more than that, and so now we like ACE because it's just a cool name. People
the call will never go away, right?
The call Will the call never go away? I don't know. I mean, I look at hospitality again. I don't know how many people call to make reservations versus online anymore. It's certainly the percentage has decreased, but you're still gonna be reasons to call. We'll accept that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to leave the impression that ACE is all about calls. That's just how it started.
Yeah.
And ACE is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And it's a virtual assistant. So what we're looking at is everything that a human does as part of the resident journey. How can we simplify the workflow and automate it where possible? And so that's really all those things are being encompassed into this thing we call a leasing assistant. It's the simplification and automation of all that stuff you do from first discovery all the way through the tour, the application, the leasing, the move in, the resident experience when you're in, and then ultimately the move out. All those major milestones in the resident journey have a lot of workflow, a lot of business process, a lot of expense on the human side to navigate. And let's take a look at simplifying those workflows, automating them where we can, and delivering great value for the operator, a great experience for the consumer, and certainly a much more enjoyable profession and career for the staff that's responsible for making it all happen.
Yeah, and you guys have been doing this for quite a while. So talk to me about the conversations you're having with current clients to get to that point of building this. I mean, because it's evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Technology is never done, right?
Technology is never done, and it's evolving, and we always have to start with what the problem is we're trying to solve, because we don't want to go into a client and try to boil the ocean. So most of our clients first reach out to ACE or to LeaseHawk because they know that LeaseHawk is all about phone calls and making sure that you answer the missed calls. So that is the most common problem that people approach us with, asking us for our help. And what we want to do in that situation is, especially for larger portfolios, is let's install ACE, let's get it up and running, and let's identify 10, 15 pilot sites, let's say, and a different mixture, so we understand call volume and demographic and all that. And then let's just go through the paces and measure ACE's performance. We know ACE is going to answer the call. We know ACE is going to answer questions on those calls. It's going to collect guest cards. It's going to schedule appointments. So we have metrics for all of that, and we almost always see great results. If we don't see great results, there's perhaps a little tuning that we have to do. But 99 times out of 100, it's just exactly what we said it was going to be. And then they start doing the rollout. Well, then we look at, how are you doing on your property website? How organized is it? How are people who navigate, visitors to your site, able to find the information that they need? Put a chatbot on there, because that's really easy and it's zero lift to do. And we've actually found that reduces phone calls. So you're trying to solve the missed phone call problem. You install ACE because she'll answer the call for you. But if you put ACE on the website, that lowers call volume as well, because people don't need to call as much if they get the answers to their questions. If you want to put, text is becoming a more and more popular channel. My son would rather text me than anything. And so the changing demographic in consumer interests and preferences is skewing more heavily towards text. And so we actually will turn the text channel on for people who say, hey, my call volume is great, but I know I've got a certain demographic that would prefer to text. We're hearing that in our surveys. Can we text? And of course we can. So we, in some cases, we go out with all three out of the gate. We'll even, if you call, we'll even offer the option to convert to text, because not everybody knows that those phone numbers are often text enabled. No one ever, they don't say that on the website necessarily. So they'll call, and then ACE will say, if you'd rather text, just let me know, and we can continue this conversation that way. And so that approach is getting more and more adoption as well. And so it's just about iteratively, incrementally turning on more ACE functionality at a site, focused on solving the problem at hand. We don't want to do something just because it's cool. I mean, I have fun doing it, but in terms of actually solving business problems, we want to make sure, okay, we're here because you're having a problem with you're not getting enough tours in, and so your conversions to leases is down. Okay, we're here to help. You're missing too many phone calls. We're here to help. You're not seeing you're not seeing a good way to measure the effectiveness of all of your ad source efforts, and so we'll track all that for you. We can measure all that. So all these things that we can do, we just tailor a package for the sites focused on the problems at hand, and we've had great success with that.
Yeah, and we'll leave some links in the the show notes here that people can get in touch and learn more about, who to work with. What does it look like after they become a customer? You have a success team. What can they expect?
Yeah. So after they become a customer, the first thing is getting ACE configured and turned on in the property. And so they are introduced to a dedicated named success manager, a client success manager, and that person is going to be with them side by side throughout their entire relationship with LeaseHawk for as long as it lasts. They'll always have that client success manager. And so we've had some clients that have been with us for years, and they've been working with the same client success manager for that entire time. And that just creates a great relationship because the LeaseHawk partner understands more about the issues going on at the property. They understand the culture. They understand the personalities involved. And we just love seeing those kinds of relationships flourish. And it's sad, but we had a client success manager leave not too long ago, and just the outpouring of just clients just wishing her well, and just like so missing her and hoping to see them again. I mean, it's sad we lose people; they move on to other areas, other chapters in their career. But then just seeing how they impacted their clients along the way is just a nice reinforcement of what we're trying to do. But once they're up and running. As I said, the configuration takes about an hour per site. We're gonna help you configure all of your ad sources. We're gonna get ACE published to all of the different locations that you're marketing yourself. Get the phone numbers that way as well. Get email addresses set up. All that configured, and then it's a matter of reviewing all the data. Like how are we performing as a team here? How are the missed calls looking? How many guest cards are we creating? How many questions are being answered? How many appointments are being scheduled, and then how many of these leads are turning into leases? These are the major metrics that we look at to help navigate the success through the funnel. But there's so many intangibles that you can look at as well that just can give you interesting insights. And initially, we'll have like a weekly or a bi-weekly call with the success team and the client. And then once we get our groove going, then it turns into monthly, then quarterly, and then it's just on an as needed basis. And in the meantime, we're continuing to provide all of the data and the insights that we're seeing. But some of these calls are interesting, especially with new clients where they don't really, the property teams may not necessarily fully understand the entire value proposition, but then they start seeing the data, like what kinds of questions are people asking? Why is it that I'm seeing a huge uptick in people asking about this particular question when I didn't see it on the radar screen before? Like holistically, we've noticed
data that you can actually make decisions from.
Right. Or if you were helping someone get across the finish line, you can actually look at the transcript they had and see what kinds of questions they were asking. And so you're still getting that human touch and seeing how you can better help that consumer, even though there wasn't a human involved with that interaction. So a lot of interesting data points there, and some of it can get fun for a data scientist or a data wonk, but we always want to, from a client standpoint, we want to make sure that we're focused on the outcomes that we're driving. What are the problems we're solving? What outcomes are we driving? And then how does ACE contribute to that?
Powerful stuff. And we've covered a lot here, of course. Always love having you on.
I love hanging out with you, Patrick. It's a lot of fun.
To go into this stuff. It's exciting times to be in multifamily, and those that can evolve, I think, is interesting. And then you're talking about even your client success team having, I mean, it says a lot, I think, too, when you have that sort of relationship in place with current customers. And I would assume as many of these organizations are designed to continue to buy other products or properties in their portfolios. So I imagine when they go down the road, like they took over a portfolio or more properties, it's just, that success team already has an understanding of what you need and those current problems, and you just start, you get more synergies.
That's exactly right. We're an extension of their leasing team in that regard.
Yeah. And are there any questions that I should be asking that I haven't asked about ACE? Because in many cases, just like clients, you don't know what you don't know. Anything that I've missed in covering what's involved here?
Wow, we did cover a lot of ground today, Patrick. So one of the things that we're always looking at is continuing to raise the bar of expectations. We want to make sure that we are the best partner that we can be to our clients. So there's some interesting things we're working on. One thing that was kind of a big win for us that we did within the last 12 months, but it's still something that I hear about a lot, And that is just all this focus on cybersecurity and the danger of all these bad guys out there trying to steal your data or to hack you and to make private information public. When you're a technology provider, you are entrusted with a lot of information about your clients, and it's important that we take that trust seriously. And so we've been working very, very diligent with our security partners and to get our SOC 2 compliance in place. And so that is done. And what I like about that is it's just a reinforcement, one, of LeaseHawk's commitment to being a good technology partner, protecting the data, following best practices, and not just telling our clients that we're doing that, asking them to trust us, but actually getting an independent third-party expert to come in, evaluate our infrastructure, evaluate our business practices, ask for evidence that we're actually doing the things that we're doing, and then saying, yes, LeaseHawk is following best practices on cybersecurity protections. They're using state-of-the-art platforms to help with that. They've got all the business processes in place. They got all the oversight. You can trust these guys. And that's really important in this day and age to make sure that you are holding your technology partners to a high standard when it comes to these kinds of things, because all it takes is one breach.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you've been around, right? And so as an asset manager, going back to insurance, just knowing some of these things are in place, if those questions are asked, it does.
Yeah.
Because operators, you can't be a technology company yourself. I know some try and do that, build own stuff and things like that. But very exciting to see what you guys are doing. Want to just kind of do a final wrap here? Any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with?
Well, the digital transformation is a journey. It's never done. And I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for what we've accomplished during this COVID crisis. It's almost cliche, but I mean, we did so much with COVID now that's becoming part of the permanent way that we do business, and there's no looking back. I think we've impressed ourselves in the industry on what we've been able to accomplish. There's still a lot to do. We are in a phenomenal industry. We are delivering a foundational service to people. We're making a significant impact on people's lives. And for me to be a part of that from a professional standpoint, I just find super rewarding. And to help operators improve their efficiencies, drive higher revenue, help cut costs, deliver a better experience, and to help their customers get what they need is just a great place to be. And so LeaseHawk we intend to be an important part of that story with helping folks with the digital transformation. And we've only really just begun.
Yeah. Refreshing thoughts, not only a great product, but also I love your vision for the industry, and the people that are in it. So appreciate all of that. With that, let's give our viewers a way to get in touch with you, and we'll see you guys on the next show.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Multifamily Innovation Show. Please remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on everything multifamily.